May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC, Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, doing our best to help preserve the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths cross his, and anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So today I'm going to read to you from Della Goertz's notebook. It's handwritten, so bear with me. Della Goertz came to Zen Center before there was Zen Center. Della Goertz was one of three women who met Shunryu Suzuki in 1959, shortly after he arrived at the American Academy of Asian Studies when Kazumitsu Kato, the priest who'd been taking care of Sokoji, the temple where Suzuki came, until he arrived. Kato was teaching a class there, on Zen, I guess, and brought Suzuki along. And Suzuki was newly arrived in America. And in that class were Della Goertz, Betty Warren, and Jean Ross, who became, extremely important students of his. So I did a podcast about Della 4 years ago, and it's still in there. This one, if you go to the podcast page on Cuke.com, the way to do that, go to the homepage on Cuke.com and then hit the podcast button. And we had so many prior podcasts that only the ones for the last year are listed. But you can find the prior ones, if you know who it is, by searching. There's a search for it. I think right now we might not have a list, so you'd have to go on YouTube or Spotify or one of them to go down the list of all the past ones for, this is the 5th year. So it's April will make 5 complete years. Anyway, so Della kept a notebook, and I think her notebook doesn't start back in 59 when she met him. I mean, the first entry I see on the left side here is 1968. It's a wonderful little notebook, and she, I'm just going to read from it. So, look, she calls him Sensei. This is May 2nd, 1968, when he gave a talk at Grace Cathedral. Now, we were all calling him Suzuki Roshi then, but she was just calling him Sensei. So her note says, Sensei, Grace Cathedral. And then she writes, and this is in quotes, Zen is almost impossible to convey except through practice. In our practice, we try not to understand anything. Although you may have some image in your mind, we try not to be concerned with it. That's the end of the quote. And then she writes, in your practice of Zen, and this might be a more quote, I don't know, it's just handwritten real quick, I guess, while she was there. In your practice of Zen, try not to be concerned with it. In your practice of Zen, although you see nothing, yet you will see everything. And then she writes a note to herself, I guess. My notes: try not to understand anything. Let it come, let it go. Zen's a basic attitude in which you are ready to think and act. Include all things in your meditation. Then everything comes to help us. We practice to experience our non-being, our non-self. Everything is Buddha nature. Everything is a koan. The Genjo koan. Everything has Buddha nature. Everything is a koan. You know what that... those are notes, right? You know what the Genjo koan is. It's Dogen's most famous fast school from the Shobo Genzo. And I think of the Genjo koan being, if we're already enlightened, why do we need to practice? Now I've turned the page in her notebook, and I read, how we understand our everyday life is a koan. We have koan of no self-nature, koan beyond being and non-being. The Buddhist way is beyond being and non-being. Everything does not go as we want. Right. Start our koan from the experience of life. Flowers die with our attachment and weeds grow with our detachment. We practice to experience non-being and non-self. Our mind should be wide open. When you sit, include all things. Everything comes to your enlightenment and helps us. Your practice is within yourself. Now, I think this is interesting. I've heard Suzuki criticized by a friend who's, into Theravada Buddhism. He says, well, there is no self. That's one of the three marks of Buddhism. He doesn't know. He says, because he'd say, be yourself and stuff like that. He'd say, but he doesn't understand Buddhism. There is no self. Well, Suzuki would call that a one-sided understanding. Of course, just like she writes here, we practice to experience non-being and non-self, or he'd call it the silly self. But he would use the word self too. We have a sense of self. We everybody can say, I am. It's that sense of self which is the non-self. So anyway, that's another koan. Why does Suzuki use the word self if Buddhism says there's no self? Well, why do you use the word I? Try to talk or communicate without using personal pronouns. Anyway, that is interesting, but don't worry your pretty little head about it. Just hear the teaching and let it go through you. It might be you might hear something from someone you regard as a teacher, and it might be an off day for them, or you might not agree, or it might. But you don't want to agree and not agree. Your mind won't know how to use it. Everything is just hinting. It's not truth. So don't worry about it too much. All right, I'm going to read more of the notebook again. Has waves, so it's impossible to stop it. No water is a part of your being enlightenment. Life can't be separated from what you really all one continuum. Life can't be separated from what you really are. It's all one continuum. Whatever happens, your mind is stable. That is everyday mind. Calmness. You must have calmness in movement, in everyday life. To be like driftwood is not our way. Well, that's interesting. And she has a question mark there. To be prepared for anything is to have big mind. We're always involved with good or bad in everyday life. That is too much, she has in parentheses. Buddha's speech is without tongue. Buddha's way is based on the view of selflessness. No self, no enlightenment. The true world is unfolding. We are not involved in the conflict of life and death. Include all without attachment in our practice. Everything comes and goes. Things advance and understand themselves. That is Zen. That sounds like out of the Genjo Koan. If you say someone is there, it's ignorance. It's in your mind. If you say it's in your mind, that's ignorance. No idea to attach to. Buddha didn't stick to enlightenment. These are all different notes, you know. Enlightenment above enlightenment. When you are really Buddha, you aren't aware of yourself as Buddha. When all is Buddha, or she just had be, you know, when all is be, when all is Buddhism, when all is Buddha, it's not necessary to be aware who is be, who is Buddha. Buddha found both sides of the truth, but he didn't find out anything special. But the true understanding is like this. He found flowers die with our attachments and weeds come with... No. Flowers die with our attachments and weeds come with our detachment. Some kind of effort should be going on in your practice. It's like a plant growing. It doesn't look like it's making an effort. You need to have that kind of effort. If you think Zazen is just calmness, that is wrong. Don't stick to old ideas of good or bad. When you think things have self-nature, practice Zazen. Thinking with whole body and mind. Within our practice, everything is included. Everything is included in your practice. Truth is there when you accept things in your practice. When you seek it, it is far away. When you have true practice with everything without any attachment, you accept it as it is, then it will be clear. Now you understand these are all things that Della Goertz wrote down that Shunryu Suzuki said and that impressed her. Nothing at all is permanent and no trace remains. To us, there is nothing outside of our mind because mind and other are one. To be free from emotional mind is to be yourself. Live in it, be free from it. The purpose of Zazen is to appreciate our being moment after moment. And then she has, Sensei says, I enjoy the sun very much. The most important thing in the world is to find the true meaning of being. We are at the center of the universe. When sitting, everything. I guess we are at the center of the universe when sitting. Everything has its own 10 directions. There's this idea in Buddhism, of the 10 directions. All right, what are that? That's in front and behind and above and below, to the left and to the right, and then sort of the angles in between. So everything has its own 10 directions. Yeah. Yeah, and he said, when you're sitting you're at the center of the universe, I think we're at the center of the universe regardless. When you seek for something outside of yourself, it's dangerous. Okay, why does he say it's dangerous? It's not because there's something dangerous outside of yourself. It's because when we seek for something outside of ourselves, we become lost, seeking after that which does not exist. Here's one. Whatever you do, if you do it with our spirit, that is Zen. He'd say things like that. What does he mean by our spirit? I'd say he means the spirit of the Buddhas and the patriarchs that has been transmitted throughout the ages. When he says our, he'd do that a lot. We say our. He just means coming from the point of view of enlightened teaching. Whenever Suzuki met with people, he'd say, let's sit. There's no place to go. But people are always seeking a place to go. So he would tell them, let's sit. I know something that he used to say to Richard Baker when Richard would ask him, what should I do, and this and that. He was a younger student. He'd say, Dick, there's no place to go and nothing to do. Now, I agree with that. However, that does not mean that we don't go places and we don't do things. There's form and there's emptiness. And, like Nagarjuna said, if you only stress emptiness, it's better never to have heard of it. As long as we are sitting, some kind of composure is important. To think, will I have enlightenment, is to lose your composure. We are something beyond just sentient being. Oh, this must be in response to a question. You are here. Don't bother about the next life. Your being will be here. Our wisdom seeks for wisdom. Enlightenment is not important, but how well you are trying now to do your best is very important. He'd say that, but somebody'd say, I'm trying to get enlightenment. He said, well, don't try. Just sit. Just be yourself. To make Buddha nature manifest, that is meditation. We emphasize calmness in everyday life as well as in meditation. Two difficulties we deal with in Zazen, the two big ones, are agitation and drowsiness. Now, here's a note Della wrote that is clearly not from Suzuki, but from her Christian background. God created man to be a companion of God. Always say, "Thou art with me." Everything is always changing, including Buddha's teaching. Now, that's a very Mahayana thing to say. You don't hear that much. Zazen is to find absolute composure in our life. We can't control emotion with our brain. We deal with it with our abdomen. She has abdomen. Suzuki would say hara. Or he'd say tummy. I wonder if he said abdomen. He used to say tummy. The main reason to practice is we don't want to play games with life. If I can't find composure in the city, I won't find composure at Tassajara. And she writes, if I'm in a sunny place, I want a shady place. If I'm in a shady place, I want a sunny place. We study Zen when our life has come to a dead end. The middle way is to find composure in all situations, to observe things as they are. Find a place in life so as not to stir your emotions. Keep a quiet place in yourself. Here it says, empty period, not quiet. That might mean the mountain is not quiet. If that's what he said that she took a note from, he was on both sides of that it's good to go to a secluded place for an intense period of practice away from distractions like Tassajara. However, he would say, but if you want to calm mind, go to a busy place. That's the way people are trained in intense concentration, too. They create a lot of racket and play radios loud while they're trying to concentrate on something. Here's another one. Keep away from your viewpoint. Aha. That's a very traditional thing in Buddhism, not to be attached to views. But, Suzuki would say, don't stick to some idea. To become straightforward is to have nothing to show. That's an interesting one. If you practice, it will bring marvelous results to you. And here's one. Are you all right? Sure. True self always answers. That can be read so many different ways. The mind is not in a place, but in the whole body. All right. I would say, okay, as long as you don't think that means the whole body is a place. Stop thought by posture. Conscious mind, no place. When you are involved in thinking good or bad, that's not good. Well, in terms of zazen, okay. We want a mind that doesn't discriminate. But of course, you also discriminate what's good and bad in a relative way. As a matter of fact, the first, the first pure, universal precept or whatever is to do all that is good and to eschew all that is bad. So everything, like this, there's another side. You always got to, which side is this on? And don't stick to one side. Harmonize with all beings. To accept our life means not to complain. Yeah, he didn't like complaining. But again, it doesn't mean you can't complain. It's sort of like Jefferson said about the Bible. And being a Christian and looking at the New Testament. And he rewrote the Gospels. But he said, you got to use your mind. We've got this mind that we can figure out what this means. You just don't have to take it literally. Now, remember, every one of these is either totally independent of the others, or they might be, different notes from one lecture. But, looking at these right here, they're in different types of handwriting. So, she might have gone to a lecture and come back and written one note. And here's one. There's something deeper or stronger than morals. That is religion in its true sense. October 12th, 68, Sesshin. Assigned seats. And I don't come until and then it trails off. That's interesting. Maybe that was new to have assigned seats, 68. October 12th, Columbus Day, my father's birthday. When you have no gaining idea, you are Buddha. Moment after moment. To sit without a gaining idea might seem difficult, but the gaining idea is monkey mind. When you want calmness, then let go of gaining idea and monkey mind. Just sit and accept your zazen. When it's hot, you're a hot Buddha. When it's cold, you're a cold Buddha. If you are attached to the same old way, you may be discouraged about your practice and confused about what is zazen. Here's a good one. Like, this is sort of like him saying, he didn't want people to come to the Zendo High. Don't bring ideas into the Zendo. When you enter the Zendo, forget what you have been doing and just sit. Then you are a quite different person. Zazen is not a continuation of everyday life. Give up everything when you practice. Take time to know what Zen practice is. Even to attain enlightenment is not good. If your conviction is not good or pure enough, the Zen master should say, "Go away," which means come again. This kind of spirit, you've got to have this kind of spirit, or you can't have a clear mind. When you have the true way-seeking mind, you have no problem in practice. Whatever you do is shikantaza. You know what mondo means? It's like question. It's like Zen question. It's not a word I come across a lot or think about. To have various problems is to have many mondo. Dogen put the emphasis on shikantaza. When we are free from ourselves, then we are free from all things. Here's a different one. The way is to accept the human voice and sound coming from all human beings. Be a very good listener. To free me from myself is the target in Zazen. Make every effort that will release you from trouble. You know, some of these notes, like that one, she puts it in first person, and then she concludes it in third person. Buddha says life is suffering. You should understand your lifetime from the viewpoint of suffering. What is suffering? Suffering means everything's changing. I mean, that's also something that Shunryu Suzuki would say. If you don't have an expectation of relief from suffering or to develop the self, we always have a target to hit. Well, okay. The most important thing is who answers yes. Who answers Avalokiteshvara? You know, we've got a list of all the times Suzuki said the most important thing. We've got the most important thing and the most important point, like 150 of each of them. But, you know, there have been a lot of additions to the lecture archive since then. And, you know, some of these could be added because I think that's at least the second most important thing here. And what I think is great is, you know, somebody will hear one of them and go, oh, he says the most important thing is so-and-so. And they'll focus on that. That's the most important thing. Yeah, but he did say, just focus on one thing and carry it through to the end. That was his answer to Mel when Mel said, what is nirvana? He said something like carrying one thing through to the end. To practice Zazen is your answer itself. Nothing to rely on apart from your life. No God, no Buddha. Buddhist practice doesn't mean to rely on something. You know, that's interesting. Like last week, I just did a sort of, I riffed on refuge. So Buddhist practice doesn't mean to rely on something. Yeah, but we take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Do we rely on it? No, of course not. Taking refuge is, I know, do it like the Diamond Sutra. To take refuge means not to take refuge. We take refuge. I've been thinking about that. What do we, you know, I've thought of so many other things to say about taking refuge. You know, we take refuge in no self, or we stop taking refuge in ourself, right? Or we take refuge in nothing at all. And what did Meister Eckhart say? He said the ultimate is to know nothing, want nothing, have nothing. He's talking about refuge there. Our refuge is to know nothing, to want nothing, to have nothing. That was my refuge this morning when I took a walk. Yeah, everything will fail us, but know nothing, have nothing, want nothing won't fail us. And again, it doesn't mean we don't know things, we don't want things, and we don't have things. Our completeness of every moment is absolute. Whatever you do, this is practice. Boy, Suzuki could be on both sides of that. Sometimes he'd think, you think whatever you do is practice. And then he'd say, whatever you do is practice. Again, it's you can't have a one-sided understanding. Also, another way to look at it is truth is paradoxical. He said once, if it's not paradoxical, it's not true. Do things with simple mind, with whole mind or body. Our trouble is we have the burden of human thought. In Zazen, don't reflect on self or evaluate Zazen. It will spoil it. It's okay not to understand completely what Zazen is. In Buddhism, there is no feeling of completion. All things come from your state of mind. All is mind, says Dogen. There is reality before you measure. Now that's very interesting. I think of measuring as science. And I think science is very important. Keep us out of a lot of trouble. But there is reality before science. There is reality before you measure. I mean, that's just my interpretation, right? Practice. Then mind will be flexible, soft, tolerant, unshakable. Practice with single heart practice. Doing things with wholeheartedness. And heart, she has a heart written. So it just says with single, then a little heart, doing things with wholeheartedness. Although you may study Zen for many years, you are no special person, just a common person. Just follow daily life, year after year. I'll second that. I'll vouch for that. Whatever you do, you will become unshakable. Nobody moves you because you are as a rock or mountain. When you do not think good and you do not think not good, you are your true self. Now again, when you hear something like that, you might immediately think, oh, but there are good things and bad things. All right. But there was a frequent teaching of Suzuki's of having problems that you just made up. He had a scroll from his teacher, Kishizawa, stones in the air, and it just had stones floating in the air. That's, problems that aren't really problems. We're just, addicted to going good, bad, good, bad. Well, there's nothing to go good or bad about, or just something we create in our mind. Yes, there's good and yes, there's bad, but the good-bad thing doesn't have to be going on all the time. And it doesn't apply to the absolute. It doesn't apply to big mind. It doesn't apply to emptiness. When the world is destroyed, it will not be destroyed. He also said once, if the world is destroyed, nothing will have happened. When you exist as your true self, you cannot admire or describe it. Here she wrote, the holiest principle of Buddhism, vast emptiness and nothing holy in it. That was Bodhidharma's reply to the Emperor of China when he first arrived. There's no need to do great things. You can have a smile if you have nothing. Whatever you do, do it naturally, without thinking. Do it for yourself, not to be noticed by others. When you stick to something, then you do not see things as they are. When we sit, emptiness is emptiness. Form is form. Physical practice means to have spiritual practices. When you have no idea of attainment, then you become Buddha. Help others by giving a kind word. Well, I'm on page 33 of 48. I haven't been reading all of them, but I think I'll stop there. Just one of them would have been enough, right? But I wanted to read from Della's notebook. It's wonderful. Della was wonderful. Della was the most pure of heart person. And she was so devoted to Suzuki, to Zen Center. No matter what Zen Center was going through, she didn't get involved. She didn't take sides. She was just supportive. And she died at 99 and a half. I used to go visit her in a convalescent home where she was. And as she got older, she started asking me the same things. Like she couldn't remember people had died, but I thought it was good just to be with her. So I went there, and I'd take Clay, my son Clay, with me sometimes. I tried to see her once a month. She was really a wonderful person. I can tell you one thing Della said. If she had to put everything she learned from Suzuki in one saying, it would be yourself. This has been a Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC, Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from Sleepy Sanur with Doggy Bandita, Feline Cuchita, and dear lovely Katrinka. And we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.